Hey guys, this is one of two videos that I owe you. Today I'm going to be ignoring that guy and talking about the diesel electric drivetrain which I have in this little shunter here. As you can see, I've cut open the sides, so and all the guts are free to and are plain to see. Let's see, let's give ourselves some electrical power, turn on the lights. Everything's shut down at the moment, which is good. Let's take a look at what's going. There's nothing really going on this end of the engine. It's perfectly stock. We have we have the starting batteries, also to power the train if there was a train attached. We have what's called a prime mover on a locomotive, and that has a arrow pointed at the engine. It's a 2-to-1 gearbox. I do not shift this gearbox. It's just 2-to-1, and no clutch. There's no clutch anywhere, and that has two medium generators. This setup produces a lot of power, but is probably actually a little bit overbuilt for this train. But I did not really dial it. This is just something I build every time I have a single engine. I just throw a 2-to-1 gearbox on it and a two medium generators and call it a day. And I don't think about it. And yes, it could be better. It could be more efficient. But that's what I do. Now, what happened? The yellow pin. I mean, each of these generators, as you can see, has a yellow or a green, an orange, and a yellow. That's the green is the numerical and accessible power output. The RPS is the power input in this case, and the electric is the actual electricity which is going out. Yeah, it's draining really fast. Better fire this up before I don't have enough electricity here. Okay, with it fired up. Now the electricity goes to exactly two things. It's connected to the electric charger, which keeps the batteries in the back and powered up, and it goes to this relay. The relay is at the moment closed. The reverser lever. All right, the reverser lever has three positions. It has on a forward 1.1, neutral, and anywhere in the middle, and reverse. Now in the forward, I think I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let's look at the other side. The other side of the relay dumps into this storage battery. The storage battery is almost completely discharged. I mean, this is actually a buffer battery. I'm not intentionally storing electricity here. I am buffering it. As the power comes in, it'll come in discrete chunks from those generators. And the motor is a little bit out of sync with the generator. So therefore I buffer the energy a little bit so I don't lose any, because any electricity that I don't store is lost, so I don't want to do that. I want to be as efficient as possible. And then finally I come to the motor. Now, the motors in this game are a little bit cheaty. They're not just an electric motor, they have what is called a proportional drive or a proportional controller. That means that you send it a very small control signal, and that has an amplifier, essentially, that switches hundreds of watt, or probably on the order of, I would say the equivalent power to one of these medium electric motors is probably on the order of 4,000 to 5,000 watts of power. Well, let me think that again. Actually, about maybe 400 or 500 100,000 watts. I know, like a Tesla electric car, that's maybe 1 or 200,000 watts. This maybe this motor can drive a ship, and that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of watts, and we're getting basically a very, very high power 100,000 watt amplifier for free built into this. So we have a green, so the inputs to the electric motor are the green and the yellow, and the output is the orange. Now, the simplest way to use this electric motor is you feed it, and you make your generator give you hold the electricity up above 95%, 95 to 1.0, and then you you hook the green to a throttle lever, and that's how you drive it. That basically, I call that a diesel battery electric configuration, and it's sort of what you start out doing. But, well, what if you did not try to control the green wire? Let's say 1.0 is forward, 0 is stopped, and -1 is reverse. Well, okay, well then all you have to do is control the yellow wire and drive it that way. So you can go over here and push this forward to 1.1, and our function here uses a built-in function called floor, Floor. And the floor function of 1.1 is 1.0. We take the 1.0, send it to there. We also send it to a threshold gate. And because the threshold gate is looking for 0, because 1 is not 0, it's now false. We invert that, and our relay is now active. Our buffer is now at 1%. So, and that we can multiply the green wire by the yellow wire, and now this train is rolling forward because the throttle is at 1%, and we're rolling forward. Okay, let's pretend we're rolling forward. We can go back to our reverser and get it into the middle there. The floor function of 0.5 is 0. 0 times 1% is 0, so we're stopped. And then when we throw a reverser backwards, floor function of -0.1 is -1. 1 is not 0, so that's false. We use a NOT gate to make it true, and now we're rolling back into the shed because our throttle is 1%. I said we're rolling back into the shed. Stupid disobedient train. Okay, let's make our reverser drive forward. Give it a huge amount of power, and more power. Huge power. And eventually we'll give it enough power. Yeah, it's strange. Because in testing you would always give it enough power to so we're at almost 42% and power. Let's go back up to full throttle. Continuing to build up more on forward thrust, burning through our fuel at a crazy rate. Well, oh, that's what happened. Stupid me. Alright, add the brakes on. Okay, well, and now because I sat in the chair, that and releasing the brakes, so I'm now I can now drive the train. Now let's do an experiment here. Now, I am slamming the throttle on the electric motor forward. Let's stop again. All right, now I have the throttle on the electric motor slammed forward, but since I'm only giving it on a 1% on electricity, the speed is only 8 miles an hour. Now I give it more, and give it about 27% throttle to the prime mover is now receiving. Well, actually, I have what's called an idler. The idler this is enough throttle to cause the large motor to turn those generators. And when I take away the throttle, it goes down to like 2 RPS. Now above that, on that idle throttle, I stack the driving throttle, and when the driving throttle is up at 30%, I mean we're going 80 miles an hour, 90, and it should. Now there is no overdrive on this train. Because there's no overdrive on the train, the electric motor, and it's limited by the inherent RPS of the electric motor. In real life, an electric motor and an electric generator are pretty much the same thing. So to the copper wires in an electric motor, it doesn't know whether it's an electric motor or an electric generator. And when you give it a certain voltage, or when you start turning it at a certain speed, it'll generate a back EMF. So that back EMF is at a certain voltage. So it requires a certain driving voltage to overcome the back voltage to continue to produce torque forward. And the point at which this craps out with the in-game electrics is about 131 miles an hour. And you do not want to drive it at that speed, so you basically call the top speed of the train 120 miles an hour and it can sprint very inefficiently at 130, and there's the 131. So we do not want to run the train at this speed. We want to back it off to about 120, and that's the efficient operating point for this train. And as you can see, we're only using about 18% throttle to let's see how much throttle we need to hold that. Yeah, so we only need about 28% throttle to hold the speed of about 120 miles an hour. So yeah, this is as you can see, that this setup is dead simple. It requires just only basically these three modules: a floor function, a little threshold to detect zero, and a little NOT gate to control the power relay. So that's that's how I do diesel electric trains. This is basically a medium scale train. I've used it with small engines with on little shunters. I've used it on huge 4-truck locomotives. I've used it with basically 15,000 1,500 storm watts generators into dual drives. I've used it with dual independent drives, basically 2 copies of that on each having 2 trucks on a single locomotive. So I've used it in a bunch of configurations. Let's look at some of those. Let's pull this. Let's clean this up. Let's take that to workbench. Let's look at let's look at some other stuff. These are projects that I've been sort of working on. These are trains I found on Workshop, and I'm working on this. So we have two on the massive generators, a 2-to-1 and a 2-to-1 gearbox, a let's see, a massive generator. This will put out maybe 15, 16. I've seen this configuration put out to up to 1900 storm watts. So it's a very, very potent configuration. Actually, to get 1900 storm watts, I'd have to put turbochargers on these generators. So if you put turbos on it, it'll be at about 1900. With this, without the turbos, maybe 1800. And it has, well, I mean, it's kind of a mess because it's a refit. I used that generator to power the rear trucks, and then I brought in one of my own one of my own standard builds, to power the front trucks. So this is, I'm using the same circuit. I'm using basically the same circuit here. I think actually, this is a slightly... Yeah, there it is. Let me see. Let me check it. Yeah, that's there's an older version of the motor controller and a recent version. The recent version adds relay control, which has turned out to be an important feature because I did not have a relay here, and I just only controlled the throttle and the motor. What would happen is the buffer battery would fill up, and then you come off of it, you engage your drive, and then it would just take off because the buffer battery is full, and that was bad. So and now all the new designs have a relay on there, and that's important. The other train I was working on was, this is Mr. New Jersey's, a very, very old build, and it took a lot of work to get this up to par. I have a fresh, I have a pivoting truck assembly under here. This is the pivot, and let's turn off the, turn it back to normal. So I had to put a rotating pivot under here. You can see that's a separate grid, and that allows these to pivot, which is very, very, very important. And I have two of those under there. The electric motors, let's see, where did I put the electric motors? The front electric motor is, it's up here. On this build, it's just where it had to end, where it ended up. And then the rear electric motor is back there. Each one of them has a, each one of them is using one of these dorky little gearboxes. And this is a 200-mile-an-hour train with dual independent drives. And each of these has two generators, exactly like I had in the smaller train, but I have two of them running off of a single controller, and this is 200 miles an hour. Very, very happy with this build. The other train was 170 miles an hour. Again, happy with that build. I know the only work left to do, that the cabin is still... It's kind of in pieces. Took out a lever there. Changed up a bunch of stuff to make it work. So it needs to be. This needs of somebody more talented than myself to finish overhauling. I took out whatever electronics packages. I think on this one the electronics package was back here. I think it still has the. So it has this big mess back here. Let's take a look. I think, yeah, that's got to go. So so that needs to be updated. So yeah, there's some a lot of it's sort of like basically the drive system's done. I'm happy with that, but the electronics needs to be either my own system or one of the more modern, the more widely used systems has to be installed. The cabin has to be gone through. Same with the other train, basically in the same condition. But I'm just showing you that my point is that the drive system is functional, and on any given train that I put it on, it basically works with the strategy. It used to have ladders here, but you can't put them back with the new editor. So the chassis was off center in the bay, so I had to move it, and I had to move the chassis forward. I added 2 rows of blocks here and shifted everything from here and back to the end. I had shifted that back, so I now have room back here to walk around on, which I didn't have before. So yeah, I did a lot of work to this train. Let's take it out for a spin. That's first prime mover, second prime mover, so I have 2 independent systems in here. No, that's not it. That's the control for that old system he has back there. Let's see. Diesel throttle is now. I took out. It had a separate lever for the electric throttle. Took that out. Don't need it. It's just 1.0. Brakes are 0. Diesel throttle is. I should be revving. I don't have an idle in here right now. Yeah, shoot, they died. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, even though I'm slamming the throttle on the electric motors, it doesn't matter because there's no electricity in the system. I'm only generating 33 storm watts per truck, so 66 on the storm watts tractive effort. And I roll this forward to wheel slip, and let's turn on some equipment here. Gauge lights, cab lights, running lights. Yeah, there's a lot of work to do on this cab, and I am not talented enough to do it. Let's get some speed going here. The point of wheel slip on this one is about 71 forward, so let's stop right before there. Yeah, it lost traction just as we touched 200. Yeah, I lost traction. I hate wheel slip. So, except for the perennial traction issue, it's a very good train. The throttle is pretty well balanced. I mean, like as you can see, I have a useful range of throttle all the way up to about 69%. On the bottom, there is no idler on this one, so if I bring it down below about 13-14%, it will kill the engines. Like if I go down to 10, the engines shut off. So we subtract about 13% from 70, so you get about about 53% range on the throttle, which is pretty good. Now, keep in mind that real-life trains use only have about 8 discrete modes of forward. So, from a real life train with only an 8 positions to a range of about 58%, I'm doing pretty well here. So, but anyway, let's try it. Let's just do a slow speed. One more slow speed test. Let's put it up to decent idle here. And alright, the motor's caught, and so yeah, I mean, if I'm around and let's do a quick reverse here. Alright, it's reversing. Alright, so what I'm doing here is I'm proving that even though this is an extremely fast, extremely powerful locomotive here, even so, I am it's still gentle enough to do shunts. I can shunt with this locomotive, and it'll be just fine. This is a very gentle shunting speed. So so if I had to use this to shunt cars in the yard, it'd be just fine. So there, point proven. I know some people have said that my scheme of just cutting motors in and out and just giving it 1 or 0 or -1 is no good. No, I'm sorry. This is proof. An absurdly powerful locomotive, and I can shunt with this. And I can go 200 miles with this. So, they go back to 60, and takes. It's perfect. So, let's say I want to drive somewhere. If I want to drive 85 miles an hour, yeah, I can do that. I just put it in the middle here, and it's just fine. Yeah, that little squeak is the overdrive. Whenever it goes 100 above, all of my trains have a little overdrive controller, and I use the same controller on every train. And whenever it crosses 100 miles an hour, it squeaks like that, 'cause it's dropping a gear. But yeah, so yeah. I can drive this train. Will do anything I want it to. Anyway. Well, I don't want to ramble too much. Thank you for watching my video, and I hope that you have a new technique for setting up trains that'll work very well for you. And I just updated my controller on my workshop with the new version has the relay controller. And the relay controller is to make sure you don't jackrabbit start off of a full battery, and that's all the information you need there. So thank you for checking this out, and I hope this is useful.